Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified. This is what, where, and how of the newspaper analysis. And in today's discussion, that is 14th of October, we will cover the Hindu and the Indian Express. Now we have divided today's discussion in two different segments. The first segment is a prelim centric segment where we will discuss four news articles as well as also discuss model questions based on these articles. Then, this will be complemented by a main centric discussion on semiconductor manufacturing in India, as well as abortion, which is regulated by Medical Termination of Pregnancies Act of the year 1971. As this main centric discussion will provide you with content that you can utilize for your mains answer writing practice. Hence, let us start our today's discussion with this first article that appeared in page 1 of the Hindu newspaper. Now the CAA, that is Citizenship Amendment Act, it has opened window for the central government to grant citizenship to select minority communities from our neighboring countries. And this topic, that is citizenship, it forms a significant provision in the Indian constitution. Hence, let us discuss why is this topic important from prelims centric point of view. And this is because in the prelims of the year 2021, a question appeared on citizenship. Hence, we have curated this question on Citizenship Amendment Act of the year 2019. Now, before discussing this question, let us first understand what is a Citizenship Amendment Act. Now, this Amendment Act, it favors citizenship for select minority communities, that is Hindus, Sikhs, Jains, Buddhists, Parsis, as well as Christians. However, these minority communities, they will be granted Indian citizenship only when they originate or migrate from three neighboring countries, that is Bangladesh, Afghanistan, as well as Pakistan. Now, only when these minority communities they have migrated to India before 31st of December 2014, then only they are eligible for such citizenship. Hence, let us now discuss the model question. Consider the following statements about Citizenship Amendment Act of the year 2019. The first statement, it says that the act is relevant only for Hindus, Sikhs, Jains, Buddhists, Jews and Christian foreigners. Now this statement is incorrect because it is Parsis and not Jews that are eligible for Indian citizenship. Further, the second statement it highlights that the act covered people who have migrated to India from Pakistan, Bangladesh and Myanmar. Now, as we have discussed, it is Afghanistan and not Myanmar that is from whom religious communities are eligible for citizenship. Hence, as both of these statements are incorrect, therefore, option D is our right answer. Whereas the PYQ is concerned, option A was the correct answer. Now, let us move to the second article of the day. And this article, it appeared in the page 10 of the Hindu newspaper. Now, this article, it highlights that the curative petition in Supreme Court on Maratha case, it will be taken up in due course of time. Hence, our topic of the today's discussion is curative petition. And this topic, it is important from GS paper 2 perspective as the syllabus, it highlights functioning of Indian judiciary. Now let us discuss why is this topic important. Because judicial review, which is a significant power of Indian judiciary, it was asked in the prelims of the year 2017. Hence, before discussing today's model question, let us first discuss what is a curative petition. Now, curative petition, it is a petition which is considered by Supreme Court only to provide remedies in case of gross miscarriage of justice in Indian judicial system. And in this curative petition, of the most senior Supreme Court judges, they considered this petition along with judges whose judgment is in question. Now, this type of curative petition, it is covered for both civil as well as criminal cases. Now, this curative petition, it was not originally mentioned in the Indian Constitution, and hence it is due to judicial precedent which was set by a case called Rupa Ashok Hura versus Ashok Hura judgment. Hence, let us now consider what is this curative petition and also discuss the model question. Consider the following statements with respect to curative petition. The first statement, it says that the curative petition is a legal remedy to correct gross miscarriage of justice. Now, as we have discussed earlier, this statement is correct. Whereas the second statement, it highlights curative petitions. They are only limited to criminal cases and cannot be filed in case of civil matters. Now, this statement is correct as they are applicable for both criminal as well as civil cases. Now, the third statement, it said that the concept of curative petition, it was introduced in the original constitution during its original framing. Now, this statement is also incorrect because curative petition, it came out due to judicial precedent in Ashok Hura case. Hence, the answer to this practice question is option A. Now, whereas the PYQ of 2017 is concerned, option A was the right answer. Sorry. Now, let us move to the third article of the day, which appeared in page 10 of the Hindu newspaper. Now, in this article, Energy Efficiency Services Limited, that is EESL, it is planning to set up a new e-commerce site to showcase its energy efficient appliances. And this topic is important from GS Paper 3 perspective, where the syllabus highlights infrastructure with specific focus on energy sector. Hence, this topic is important because UPSC in 2016, it asked a specific question on Bureau of Energy Efficiency's star labeling requirements. Hence, before discussing this model question, let us first discuss what is a EESL. Now, Energy Efficiency Services Limited, it is promoted by Ministry of Power as well as 4 PSUs, that is NTPC, Finance Corporation Limited, Renewable Energy Corporation Limited, as well as Power Grid Corporation of India Limited. And this EESL, it is affiliated to Bureau of Energy Efficiency. As this bureau, it provides for star rating of appliances where 5 star is given to most energy efficient appliance, whereas 1 star it is given to the least energy efficient appliance. Now, this star rating, it is provided for 2 different types of categories. The first is that 15 electronic devices, they are eligible for mandatory rating, whereas 20 electronic devices, they are eligible only for voluntary rating. Hence, let us now move towards the practice question. As the practice question, it asks us to consider following statements. The first statement, it says that the Energy Efficiency Services Limited, it is a joint venture of PSUs with Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. Now, this statement is incorrect because it is Ministry of Power and not Ministry of Renewable Energy that has brought forward the Energy Efficiency Services Limited. Further, the second statement, it says that EESL, it is affiliated to Bureau of Energy Efficiency. As from our discussion, we can safely say that statement 2 is correct. Whereas let us consider the third statement, which says the BEE, it has made star rating system mandatory for all electric appliances. Now, as we have discussed, these rating system, they are for both voluntary as well as compulsory rating system. Hence, this statement is also incorrect. Therefore, our answer to this question is option A. Whereas the PYQ of 2016 is concerned, option D was the correct answer. Now let us move to the fourth article of the day, which appeared in page 12 of the Hindu newspaper. Now, in this article, a company called ImmunoACT, its cell therapy to treat blood cancer, it was approved by the CDSO. Hence, in the scope of our today's discussion on CAR cell therapy, it is important because UPSC in GS paper 3 it highlights awareness related to the field of biotechnology. Now, this topic is important from prelims perspective as well because UPSC in 2021 it asked a question on recombinant vector vaccines, and hence we have curated a model question based on same theme. Now, before discussing this question, let us discuss what is a CAR T cell therapy. Now, this CAR therapy it is utilized to treat blood cancers, primarily leukemia as well as lymphoma. Now, in this treatment, the T cells, which is a form of white blood cells, they are harvested from an individual's system, and these T cells they are then produced in a lab. Now, researchers what they do is that they modify these cells by introducing a specific protein which is called as chimeric antigen receptor. And now what this CAR does is that they provide cell with specific protein which enables these cells to bind to our immune system. Hence, they activate our immune system in such a way that they can fight the cancer cells which emerge in our body. Hence, when these CAR cell they bind to cancer cells, they are destroyed in our human system. Therefore, let us now discuss what is a CAR therapy. Consider the following statements with reference to CAR cell therapy. Whereas the first statement, it says that it involves directly activating the patient's immune system against cancer. As we have discussed in our discussion, this statement is correct. Whereas now consider second statement. This statement, it highlights that the treatment is more than 90% effective against all types of cancers. Now, as we have discussed, this cell therapy, it is only applicable in case of leukemia as well as lymphoma. Hence, this statement is incorrect. Now, the third statement is said that the therapy does not have any kind of side effects. Now, this statement is again incorrect because in this therapy, there are some kind of side effects such as nausea, high fever, trouble in breathing, as well as certain neurological symptoms such as confusion, seizures, as well as speech impairment. Hence, as we have discussed, the answer to this question is option A. Now, whereas the PYQ of 2021 is concerned, the correct answer was option C. Now, after we have dealt with the prelim centric articles, let us now move towards main centric coverage of our today's newspaper. And our first article in this regard, it appeared in page 10 of the Hindu newspaper. Now, in this article, the government it is planning to have partnerships to manufacture semiconductors inside Indian territory. And now, why is this topic important from our exams point of view? Because manufacturing semiconductors in India, it involves changes in our industrial policy, and it has also a positive effect on our industrial growth. Whereas in the mains of their 2023 itself, a question appeared on manufacturing sector and why is there a need to increase its share in India. Hence, let us start off with this article. Now, as we know that there are two types of conductors. Sorry, there are two types of materials. The first, they are known as conductors because these conductors they allow free flow of electrons which makes them good conductor of electricity. Whereas on the opposite side, there are materials which are known as insulators. As these material, they inhibit the flow of electrons, thereby making them bad conductors of electricity. And in between them falls what is called a semiconductor. And these semiconductors, they have a specific feature because they only allow partial flow of electricity through them. And this flow, it can be further regulated by a process. Hence, these semiconductors, they are useful in devices such as mobiles, telecom equipments, industrial machinery, computing devices. Now, also with further improvement in technology, we have seen that automobiles, which are primarily a mechanical device, they are also featured with severe and several semiconductors. Hence, there is a global demand for these semiconductors. But we should also note that semiconductor manufacturing is a very complex process because semiconductors and their manufacturing, it involves high degree of precision and also a certain high level of technological expertise. And hence naturally this semiconductor manufacturing process, it is very concentrated at the hands of only few nations. The most important nation in this regard is Taiwan, because Taiwan currently, it is responsible for manufacturing of more than 60% of world semiconductors and also more than 90% of advanced semiconductors around the world. Also important manufacturers are United States as well as South Korea. Now, as we have noted that the nature of semiconductor manufacturing, it is concentrated, and hence it also brings us to a significant risk of supply chain disruption. As we have seen, due to two primarily factors, the supply of semiconductors, it was affected recently. The first is due to US China, as they have involved in some kind of a trade and technological conflict. And in this conflict, the USA, it has tried to restrict the access of technology for China by making a like-minded alliance of countries. Whereas on the other hand, China, it imposed severe restrictions on flow of essential components such as gallium as well as germanium, which are used for manufacturing of semiconductors. And hence, it resulted into disruption of supply chain of semiconductors. Whereas due to COVID-19 pandemic, there was worldwide lockdown, and this also resulted into shutdown of semiconductor manufacturing units. And this, it resulted into supply and demand mismatch of semiconductors across the world. And even in India, automobile companies, they found shortage of these semiconductors, which resulted into production lags. And in this regard, we shall discuss why is domestic semiconductor manufacturing important for India. Now, India, it plays a critical role in global semiconductor manufacturing system because India, it has a huge market size which is only about to multiply by 3 times of by the year 2026. Also, India has emerged as a hub for chip design because India currently it designs more than 2000 chips per year. Also, India has a presence of a significant large scale of R&D industry. As this industry, it generates for more than $2.5 billion of revenue every year and also includes designing of many semiconductors. But there's also a catch related to India's role in semiconductor manufacturing because currently India is completely import dependent for all its semiconductor requirement. And out of this 100%, 37% of semiconductors they are only sourced from one country, that is China. And in this regard, the government it wants to reduce our import dependency on semiconductors. And therefore, it has brought forward many policies which will enable India to emerge as a global semiconductor manufacturing hub. The first policy in this regard, it was National Policy of Electronics, which was brought in the year of 2019. As this policy, it wants to empower India to become a global hub for electronic system design and manufacturing sector. Further, it also encourages the development of core components, which includes chipsets. The second important step by the government was scheme for promotion of manufacturing of electronic components and semiconductors, also known as spec scheme. And in this scheme, the government will provide incentives up to 25% of capital expenditures for list of products that also include semiconductors. Also, India launched what is called a production linked incentive scheme as well as India's semiconductor mission, which provides for scheme for semiconductor industry. And in this, there was a Semicon India program. As this program, it wants to provide attractive incentives for industry for setting up of display fabs, semiconductor fabs, compound semiconductors, as well as encourage design of semiconductors in India. Now, this scheme is valid up till 6 years from the year of 2021. And the nodal ministry for this scheme is Department of Electronics and Technology and Semiconductor India Mission. Also important for government policy was that Indian government it signed a deal with US which was known as Initiative for Critical and Emerging Technologies. As this deal it will enable India to access technologies which will be utilized for manufacturing of high-end semiconductors and chipsets. Now, after we have discussed government policies for manufacturing of semiconductors in India, let us discuss why is it necessary for India to have its domestic semiconductor manufacturing capability. And this is because a semiconductor industry in India will provide a certain economic as well as industrial growth to India. Now, development of a semiconductor industry, it will have a multiplier effect. As India currently, it is witnessing a huge domestic demand for electronic products. And to meet this domestic demand, we need to have a domestic manufacturing capacity. As by domestic manufacturing capacity, we will be able to reduce our import dependency on other countries such as China. Further, development of a domestic manufacturing industry will also generate huge employment for Indian youth. Hence, economic and industrial growth it warrants development of semiconductor industry. Additionally, there is also a requirement of national security because key sectors such as telecommunication, power as well as defense they depend on different kind of semiconductors for their day-to-day requirements. And hence, government it wants to protect these sectors from external state as well as non-state actors. Therefore, to ask for semiconductors from trusted sources, we need to develop a domestic manufacturing capacity. Additionally, there's also a geopolitical benefit associated with the domestic manufacturing of semiconductors because currently we are dependent on China for our 37% of requirement of semiconductors. And hence, this plays us in the China's hand when they have to deal with us because they have encroached in our Indian territory. And only when will we be able to reduce our dependence on China, then it will give us an upper hand with dealing with China on our domestic nation requirements. Hence, domestic manufacturing of semiconductors it will provide us with significant geopolitical benefits. Further, as we witnessed during COVID-19 pandemic, there was severe semiconductor shortage, and this was because the supply chain of semiconductors it was disrupted due to lockdowns. Hence, there is a need to ensure supply chain resilience for our semiconductor supply. And there's no better way to result in for this supply chain resilience rather than developing a domestic industry. Further, this domestic industry will also provide India with a significant technological leadership. As semiconductors, they will play a critical role in industrial revolution fourth, which will provide our way forward in coming future. And only when we have a significant domestic manufacturing capacity, then only will be able to play a leadership role in the technological sector. Now, naturally, setting up a semiconductor industry in India is a challenging aspect. And what are the challenges that India is faced with currently? Let us discuss this in the next slide. Now, the first challenge, it relates to the cost of establishment, because currently establishing a domestic semiconductor manufacturing industry, it requires investment about 5 to 7 billion dollars per factory, which is a significant amount, and hence this amount, it acts as a constraint in domestic manufacturing development of semiconductor industry. Further, setting up of a semiconductor industry, it also requires certain infrastructural developments, such as it requires continuous electricity supply as well as fresh water supply. And this requirement, it is difficult to scale up on a large scale basis in a current setup. And hence, this further adds to the challenges in setting up of semiconductor industry. Further, there is a long gestation period in setting up a domestic manufacturing, because any domestic manufacturing, it will only be able to function properly after 5 to 6 years, and hence setting up, it requires a long gestation period. Further, there are also shortage of skilled workforce with respect to manufacturing of semiconductors. Now, India currently, it has a large pool of engineers which is trained in designing as well as supply chain of semiconductors. However, manufacturing sector, it requires a different set of expertise which is currently absent or very low in India. Now, even though many universities as well as industrial setups, they are working on increasing their skilled workforce, but this workforce will only be able to work properly in a coming future. Further, setting up a domestic manufacturing ecosystem, it also requires backward and forward linkages. For example, you need to import certain raw materials such as gases for manufacturing of semiconductors. However, currently, India is dependent on external sources for importing such raw materials. Hence, there is an absence of proper ecosystem to provide for a domestic manufacturing. Now, after we've discussed what are the challenges and constraints for manufacturing setup in India, let us now discuss a way forward which will suggest measures for improving the semiconductor manufacturing ecosystem in the country. Now, the first option naturally, it is related to ecosystem development, because only after we have a significant ecosystem, we'll be able to have a significant supply chain and manufacturing facilities. Further, it also requires India to undertake a large scale skill development for manufacturing capacity, and it will enable India to reap the benefits of its demographic dividend. And only by focusing on training of labor, we will be able to reap this benefit. Also, India should focus on research and development by increasing the spending of private sector in these research and development activities. As currently, government has a large share in research and development activities, whereas on the other hand, the private sector, they lag behind. Hence, we need to encourage private sector to invest in their R&D capabilities. Also, this can be further improved by industry and academia collaboration, as it will enable industries and provide internship opportunities for academic students in India and its manufacturing industries. Further, India also needs to work upon strengthening its domestic partnership with other countries such as USA, South Korea, as well as Taiwan. And then only India will be able to access raw materials as well as emerging technologies which can be utilized for manufacturing of semiconductors inside Indian territory. Further, this also need to attract foreign companies. Now, India recently it signed a deal with a US based company called Micron Technologies, Whereas further, TSMC, which is a Taiwan based manufacturing behemoth, it is also envisaged to set up a manufacturing capacity in India. Hence, by attracting more foreign companies, we will be able to develop this ecosystem in a better manner. Hence, by undertaking ecosystem development, undertaking skill development, focusing on research and development specifically by private sector, undertaking industry and academic collaboration, strengthening our partnerships with like-minded nations, and attracting foreign companies to set up their domestic sector in India, we will be able to provide for a better and comprehensive semiconductor manufacturing ecosystem in India. Hence, this was all for today's discussion on semiconductor manufacturing. And hence, let us move to the last article of the day, which appeared in both Indian Express Explained section as well as the Hindu newspaper. Now, this article it primarily highlights the nature of abortion and its legal provisions in India. Now, this development it is important from GS paper 2 perspective because the syllabus it highlights government policies and interventions for development in various sectors and issues arising out of their implementation. Further, in the mains of the year 2017, a question appeared on Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, and hence the act that is medical termination of pregnancy which provides for abortion in India, it is important from our exams point of view. Hence, let us discuss what is this Medical Termination of Pregnancies Act of the year 1971. Now, primarily, there are two sides of debate on issue of abortion. The first side, it provides a pro-choice side which encourages mother to have a certain reproductive rights. As this side, it favors that women they have a complete autonomy over their own body, and hence they are free to undertake termination of their pregnancies as per their choice. And this side, it favors that no child should be brought in this world in case they are unwanted. Whereas the second choice, it provides for a pro-life argument. As this, it favors the rights of an unborn child. And this argument is primarily brought forward by religious and spiritual institutions because they feel that the god is responsible for providing life to an individual, and us humans we are in no position to take life of an unborn child. Now, in this regard, let us discuss the Medical Termination of Pregnancies Act of the year 1971, which provides for a significant reproductive rights to Indian women. Hence, we can say that this act it subscribed to a pro-choice argument. Now, this act it provides for medical termination of pregnancies in India, and Section 3 of this act it deals with termination clause in case of pregnancy. Now, there are three different types of clauses. The first, in case the pregnancy is less than 20 weeks old, then a woman she can get her pregnancy medically terminated after an opinion by one registered medical practitioner. While on the other hand, if the pregnancy is between 20 to 24 weeks of duration, then a woman she can get her pregnancy medically terminated after she gets an opinion of two registered medical practitioners. And these practitioners they will give their opinion after they meet with two requirements. The first is that if pregnancy it is creating a significant threat to life of a woman, then they will give their assent to medical termination. Further, if a child it is expected to be born with severe physical as well as medical abnormalities, then these registered medical practitioners they will give their consent for termination of pregnancy. While on the third case, which is pregnancies for more than 24 weeks old, a woman she can get her pregnancy medically terminated only after she receives an assent from a medical board, which is constituted by the state government. And this medical board, it provides assent only after it is able to diagnose certain and substantial fetal abnormalities in an unborn child. Hence, we can say that the Medical Termination of Pregnancies Act, it is able to provide significant reproductive rights to women up till 24 weeks of pregnancy. Now let us discuss what is what benefits are associated with implementation of this act. First of all, is that this act, it provides women with health and safety, because without law, the medical termination, it will be met by illegal clinics, and this will bring certain risks to women which may be resulted from unsafe procedures as well as infections. However, with a legally safe and state with legally safe and state approved method, a woman, she can get her pregnancy terminated in a designated clinic. Further, this act also provides women with their reproductive rights. As legal support, it ensures dignity, autonomy, confidentiality, as well as justice for women who are seeking their termination of pregnancies. Further, this act also provides unmarried women with an opportunity to get their pregnancies terminated. Hence, this act, it strengthens reproductive rights both for married as well as unmarried women. Further, it also encourages social acceptance for freedom of choice. First of all, when a state brings a law, it gives an issue a state sanction, and hence people who are averse to these conditions, they also get accustomed to certain provisions, and hence India, it will gain social acceptance for the issue of medical termination of pregnancy after this act. Further, this act, it also enables medical practitioners to undertake termination of pregnancies inside their clinics, because this act, it provides medical practitioners an opportunity to navigate difficult social circumstances. As this act, it provides them with various legal measures which can be undertaken in case the woman is not eligible for medical termination of pregnancies. However, despite several benefits, this act in its implementation, it faces certain challenges. The first of which is that there is a significant shortage in India with respect to qualified doctors. For example, in community health centers, overall India, there are only 1351 trained obstetrician and gynecologist, which means that there are about 75% shortage of qualified doctors all across rural India. Further, India also witnesses a several lag in health infrastructure, because only 53% of abortions, they are done in an institutional setup, whereas rest 47%, they are undertaken by nurse, auxiliary nurse midwife, and family member of a woman itself in a home based setup. Therefore, these women, they are exposed to certain risks related to their complications. Further, the awareness of MTP Act in India is currently very low, as people, they are not aware of the law and its significant provisions, and hence this makes enforcement and application of the law extremely difficult. Further, there is also a social stigma which is attached to the issue of abortion. Here, hence, victims of rape who are desired with unwarranted pregnancies, they face difficulties in accessing institutional setups for their medical termination. And also, family of these members, they are also apprehensive of undertaking abortion due to social shame. Further, the issue of abortion, it also faces opposition from religious groups, because these religious inscription in text, they one form or the other, they oppose the idea of abortion, and this opposition, it hinders social acceptance and hence leads to limited use of medical termination law. Therefore, we need certain steps to make this law more comprehensive as well as make its implementation more desirable. What are these steps? Let us take a look in the next slide. Now, the first step in this regard is that any law, that is MTP law of 1971, it should undertake both rights of women as well as that of unborn child. Therefore, any law and its application, it requires a certain degree of confidentiality. Further, there is also a need to increase awareness among people related to importance of human life as well as importance of contraceptive in reducing the amount of unwarranted pregnancies. Further, there is also a need to improve family planning among the newly wed couples as they will then be able to plan their pregnancies in a more desirable manner. Also, there is a need to improve shortages which are currently related with respect to doctors as well as infrastructural setup because there's a significant amount of shortage in doctors which we have already discussed in the previous slide. And now only by overcoming this shortage, the implementation of MTP Act will be done in a better manner. Further, there's also a need to improve law and order situation in the country because only then we will be able to reduce the amount of crimes that happen in Indian society such as rapes which has resulted into huge amount of unwarranted pregnancies. Therefore, reducing the amount of crimes will help us overcome circumstances that warrant the application of MTP law. Therefore, to improve the implementation of MTP Act, we need to raise awareness, encourage more family planning measures, overcoming shortage of doctors and infrastructure, as well as prevent crimes that lead to rapes. Therefore, this was all for today's discussion on MTP Act of 1971 and it also concludes our daily news simplified. Stay tuned for more important updates.